Okay, we're going to talk about the Codex Mendoza before we get into, or the frontispiece, which means basically the cover of the Codex Mendoza. Before we get into it, though, a little bit of context, uh, especially since this piece is quite unusual uh, because of its style and who made it versus who it was made for. So we're dealing with Spain and the New World, right? So the Spanish exploration happening in the 16th, 16th century, and before that as well and beyond it as well. They're pouring a lot of money into exploration. They think, of course, they're going to find gold or wealth or any number of things. So they're pouring a lot of money into that. And we have Hernan Cortez. You need to know Cortez, right? So he is the explorer that first makes contact with the Aztecs. Now, I believe that, I know he was mentioned already when we looked at the Templo Mayor from Tenochtitlan, the Aztec temple. He makes contact with them about 1519. As you already know, the Aztecs had been around and ruling for a couple of hundred years already. They had a huge population that they were that they ruled over, about 11 million people. Not all of those people were happily ruled over by the Aztecs, which is part of what makes Cortez successful in conquering them. I'll get to that in just a moment. So Tenochtitlan, you already know, that's with the Templo Mayor, right? Tenochtitlan, the ruins of Tenochtitlan are under Mexico City. And Tenochtitlan was understood to be divided into four quarters. How many other kinds of quarters can there be? Four quarters. It was a city of canals and small islands divided into those four particular spaces. It was an extremely advanced functioning city. When the Spaniards came, when the soldiers saw it, they were really blown away by the complexity and the sophistication of the layout and how the city ran. It said, some of the soldiers among us who had been in many parts of the world, in Constantinople and all over Italy and in Rome, said that so large a marketplace and so full of people and so well regulated and arranged they had never beheld before, right? So, of course, we know that Cortez defeats the Aztecs. They are defeated by Cortez and Spain. What defeats them? Guns, right? That's the main one of the main things. Horses, which are brought over from Europe, right? And then also native allies. I mentioned earlier that some of those 11 million people that the Aztecs ruled over were not happy. The Aztecs were quite violent. We recall, the blood sacrifices and the heart sacrifices that took place on the Templo Mayor. They ruled with a very heavy hand, and so a number of the people that they ruled over basically worked along with Cortez in order to conquer them because they were so tired of being ruled by the Aztecs. So we have the frontispiece of the Codex Mendoza. Okay, again, just the cover. I mentioned the quarters of Tenochtitlan, the capital city, and here they are. And so it's interesting here that we're looking at this piece as in the later Europe, or actually it's in the early Europe section of our units. So this is not classified as an indigenous American piece. It is classified as a European piece, even though if we look at it and look at the details, it's clearly not created by a European. It has all the hallmarks and markings stylistically and content-wise of an Aztec piece. So we're wondering, well, then why? Because the creator officially is understood to be the Viceroyalty of New Spain. So in other words, this piece was created not by a member of the Spanish court or the Spanish government necessarily, but it was commissioned by a member of the Spanish government and was overseen. The creation of it was overseen by actually a priest who worked for the Spanish government. But we can see it's clearly in Aztec style, right? So it's attributed to the Viceroyalty of New Spain, even though the style and the artist or artists themselves are Aztec. Okay. So Codex just means book, by the way, in case you're not aware. Let's take a look at a closer view. It's going to get a, here we go. The great thing about these sites, you can get a close-up view. Okay. So just kind of take in, again, it's made into quarters. It's kind of that blue